All right, welcome back. We're going to finish episode 49, Entered Apprentice of the CubbyWhole podcast. And while we're roaming through Far Harbor.
Entered Apprentice. All right, let's get back to it. That was just a little sketch that I did for a presentation a while back. I figured I'd just share it here, just to give a little break, little time to ponder on what I just shared. So I hope everyone is following along with the slides and hopefully understanding what I'm presenting. I know this information can be very difficult for many, especially the uninitiated or the beginners. It's very abstract to the uninitiated for sure. And please, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at cubbyhole@mail.com, and I'll try to make sure that I get back to you as quickly and thoroughly as possible. I'm really trying to be as clear with what I'm breaking down on this show, and because I know it's a lot, and I know there's a lot that I may leave out, or maybe I'm just not being as thorough as I could be. But you got to remember, with this type of information, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. It's unbelievable how much is in this trestle board or in these tracing boards. I'm going to get into what I mean by that too, but it's definitely going to be on you to go look into this further and do your own research further if you really truly want to have an enlightening experience. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read a quote from the 33rd degree Freemason Charles Webster Leadbeater. And he said, "The business of the entered apprentice is to take himself in hand morally and conquer the physical body so that its impulses will not stand in the way of his rapid progress or evolution. The entered apprentice of Egypt used to remain 7 years in the first degree because he had to fit himself thoroughly for the illumination which could come only to one who had his emotions under control and sufficiently purified to reflect and serve the higher self. That being done, the smooth ashlar was to be perfected until it was ready to be used as a living stone in the temple of the grand architect of the universe, fit to form part of the heavenly man of the future." I really, really like that quote. And, this is about understanding the pyramids, okay? That's the way I see it. And, the pyramids are a direct corresponding temple to the consciousness of human beings. That's why understanding this knowledge helps build a moral world. All right. So, smoothing out our ashlars, becoming more conscious of the mysteries, my stories, makes for a perfect fit for a sturdy lodge, universally and individually. Okay. See, because it's about understanding the law of freedom. The more moral a society becomes, the more free that society becomes. Okay. So the more perfected and smoothed out we get, the more perfected and smoothed out we get our ashlars, get our asses together, the better and stronger our temple will be for future generations, progeny and posterity. And we use the 24-inch gauge to polish our ashlar by where our time and attention goes, right? That the hours in the day are not to be spent carelessly or selfishly. They should be measured and divided into 3 parts. 3 because 3 is the spiritual number. So 8 hours of labor, 8 hours of sleep and refreshments, and 8 hours devoted to the Creator and studying the self. You got to gauge your time wisely. See, you got to 24-inch, gauge your time wisely, gauging with care, caring where our time and the day is spent. And then we use the tool known as the common gavel. And this tool is for breaking off the corners of the rough ashlar. It's about bettering the builder's use to warn us of the duty of disposing our minds and consciences of all the vices and impurities of life by fitting and adjusting our spiritual bodies as living stones for the building that's not made with our actual physical hands. It's about purifying the heart and aligning to the common inherent law of nature. It's about triangle on top of the square, as the ancient Egyptians would say. The triangle being the spiritual and the square being the material. And we have to overcome the material. We have to put the triangle on top of the square. And that's about building a sturdy home, a sturdy temple. And then we see a board with a drawing of a layout of this temple. And it's a rough sketch of a tracing board. The beginning stages of this temple, of this lodge. It's where the student is taking notes and piecing the puzzle of life together. It's a floor cloth or a floor plan. It's a framework on a board or canvas, with emblems of, any particular degree that are inscribed. And there's been some debate on the word for these boards, called either a trestle board or a tracing board. And what I've come to learn is the first degree board is, in fact, a trestle board, correctly called a trestle board, okay? But all of these boards I'm sharing, first, second, third degree, they're all tracing boards. So you can call it a trestle board or a tracing board. But either way, it's about understanding that we are tracing ourselves back to our origins. This is an outline and we're tracing down our aspects of consciousness in order to become conscious of ourselves in the now, to understand why our condition is the way that it is. We're tracing our being in a timeless manner. We're going back in time, and we are tracing ourselves to that time period. So to make this trestle board or this tracing board is to trace our mind in order to understand the symbols of the ancient past. Okay? So once we have traced ourselves out, we are tracing ourselves back and then understanding what happened in the past in order to understand what is happening in the now. I know that's a lot to, really chew on, but it is very, very important, and it's not easy to say, but it's very, very, very important to really, really ruminate on that, okay? So the circle with a dot that we see laying on the floor, and this represents the beginning stages of alchemy and the sun, okay? Now, it is a solar symbol, and it's an alchemical symbol. It's not only that. So being on the floor at the foot of the ladder means starting in base metals, base consciousness, darkness and ignorance, which is at the opposite side of the ladder, where the gold, the sun, the light, and enlightenment reside, right? So we're starting, the circle on the floor is about starting in base consciousness, in base metals. And this symbol is highly important if we truly want to understand the higher degrees of the universe, the higher degrees of the self, okay? This symbol is it's also not just a symbol that is two-dimensional either. This is a three-dimensional symbol, but that's something that we actually talked about on the first show, but we will definitely be getting further into that as we move forward. The biblical book that we see with the square and compass on top at the foot of the ladder, this is known as the three greater lights, or three pieces of furniture of the lodge. And as I mentioned before, this is about beginning to learn to read symbolically and literally, and knowing how to decipher truth from falsehoods. It's about comparative religion, learning the foundations and the similarities of all major doctrines. The book equals knowledge, which is at the foot of the ladder, what's known as Jacob's ladder. And this symbolically means having the knowledge, the understanding and the wisdom to begin to go forth on the journey and unlock the mysteries. We have to have a strong foundation before going up that ladder. We have to have a strong foundation in our knowledge before we can understand how to go up that ladder, really. So it's important to understand that this ladder, the name of this ladder is Jacob's ladder, which is also part of understanding this pillar. But this is a symbol of ascension, and it's also about descending, raising to higher spiritual planes and being able to descend back down. Now keep in mind about the directions on the trestle board, the NEWS, or north, east, west, and south. So the bottom of Jacob's ladder is pointed down towards the W. And remember, I said W at the bottom underneath the floor is about the material world. It's symbolic of the physical realm, right? W is west, which is about westing. And westing is about living in materialism, or going, in the direction away from evolution or away from light. It's about ignorance to natural law and believing moral relativism. And I would postulate that the silent W in the word wrong is what the W means in the bottom of this board as well, because it's about going in the wrong direction. So W being in the wrong direction, and then east would be going in the right direction. And that'll make a little bit more sense maybe in the next show when I get into turning this board on its right side. Okay, so looking at this ladder, Jacob's ladder, we see it starts from the three greater lights. So the book, the square and the compass, and then its direction southwest. This direction is the darkest part of this trestle board and symbolizes ignorance, base consciousness, and it symbolizes materialism. And the rest of the ladder goes northeast. It goes up northeast. and fades and towards the sun. It fades into the sun symbol, which indicates the direction of enlightenment. And among many things, we have to understand that this ladder, this ladder is like, it's like an elevator shaft from the physical earthly material world to the spiritual heavenly realm. Okay? And the goal is to bring them together and erect a strong wisdom pillar, the middle pillar with the W at the bottom. But this part, this beginning, will have to take faith in the existence of truth to begin this journey upward. That's what truth requires. Faith or belief that it indeed does exist. That's what taking a leap of faith truly means. You know, the student knows that a leap of faith is required to find the truth. Otherwise, it's not worth it. It's not worth going on this journey. But it's pretty amazing because once you do take that leap of faith, I can only tell you from experience, it has unraveled nothing but truth. Very painful truth, especially, but very beautiful nonetheless. Because it's about unraveling the truth about ourselves. It's about finding out where the dogma is within us. And, you know, once we take that leap of faith, we don't need faith anymore. We already know now that truth does exist. And then we just keep unraveling more and more about ourselves. And that's the point, because we're after truth. And the more we unravel about ourselves, the more truth is revealed. So the three beings on this ladder, they represent the three initiates. And the knowledge of the Kybalion and the three initiates regarding the Hermetic principles, this information, this book, will help us understand this ladder and this trestle board way, way further. You actually can't understand this image without understanding the Hermetic principles. It's not possible. And if you need that knowledge, I highly recommend reading the Kybalion and the three initiates. And also, Brandon and I broke down the principles in I believe the middle teens of this series early on, like somewhere between like 13 and 16 or something like that. So the three initiates are faith, hope, and charity. So you had to have the faith to, you know, the belief that truth exists. And now you're going to move up the ladder to hope, and then you're going to give back with charity at the top of the ladder, which I'm going to get into. So you have the entered apprentice, the first initiate. You have the fellowcraft initiate in the middle, and then you have the master mason or master builder initiate at the top. Or you could also say youth at the bottom, manhood in the middle, and then old age at the top. So the first initiate is the youth, the entered apprentice. This being, as are all these beings, are aspects of consciousness. So, as I said, what we really need is faith to go up that ladder. And that feminine being is sitting at the lower rung with a book in her lap. She's feminine and in yellow, which symbolizes cradling the light, the knowledge, you know, beginning to find our care in search for truth. So she represents the beginning stage of, you know, caring enough to believe that truth does exist. And, you know, and then obviously that's where we start to, you know, look for our care. So beginning to come out of our tomb to ascend spiritually up the ladder, right? And, the word entered has some green language as well in this case. So entered is phonetically, entered sounds like the word interred. So Interred. It's not spelled the same, but it phonetically sounds the same. And this means place in a grave or tomb. And what are we doing? We're coming out of our tomb. We're going up the ladder. We're coming out of our sleep state, our dead state, if you want to call it that. This is where we rise out of our tomb or sleeping body or entered. Okay, we're rising, we're raising. We're starting to see the rays because we're starting to care. We're starting to ascend. We're starting to do the work that is needed to go up that ladder to find ourselves, to find our higher self, our betterment, our balance. This is where we begin to awaken the spirit within us. Okay? So as we begin to awaken and go further in our pursuit, the journey starts to ask or test us by seeing how much we care. And that's what the middle initiate represents. And this middle or fellowcraft initiate is dressed in green. And green is a very powerful color to, really deeply understand. This color represents many things that we really, really need to pay very close attention to, including the resurrection of moral alignment and the visible nature and the middle frequency color of the visible spectrum, right? Because if you look at the visible spectrum of color, you'll see that green is always in the middle. And green is the color of the healthiest foods to eat, right? This initiate is also wearing a sash. The garment, which is the shape of a G, a very important letter in Freemasonry that I'll be breaking down in the next few shows. But the sash is symbolizing commencement or graduation to a higher rung on the ladder, right? It's about the beginning of finding our true care. We're finding our care to go up this ladder. And that's what this initiate truly represents, true care. And care is associated with the heart, which makes another important connection because the heart chakra, the Anahata heart chakra, is green, right? So if we look closely, we'll see that this initiate is holding an anchor, resting on the middle rung, which is symbolic of being anchored in the heart. So no matter what direction we go on this ladder, whether it be up in the clouds spiritually, the sun, the moon, or the stars, or, down on the pavement physically where more work may need to be done, right? More groundwork. And the anchor is a symbol of hope. And whether anyone agrees or not, I believe that the anchor is also the ankh, with the barge connected to its bottom. And the ankh being the symbol of life, and the barge being the wide U-shaped symbol, which is the womb of the universe. So womb of life, right? And in life, the physical is always pulling on what? The spiritual. And the spiritual is always pulling on the physical. And this gives us the midpoint, right? And then the initiate is lifting her right hand, pointing up the ladder, which indicates, towards truth or the way of the truth and fidelity or loyalty. And then right behind her is a key. Oh, no. And key is always very important in symbology. And This key is hanging by a thread, by the thread of life. And this is about care coming close to being abandoned forever. In the mysteries of the ancient Egyptian archetypal goddess Isis, the key was a hieroglyphic of the opening or closing of the heart and conscience in the kingdom of death for trial and judgment. So to care is to not lie. To not lie in our speech, as well as in, when we look at it in green language, don't allow the key to lie on the pavement of the house. We can't abandon the key or care if we wish to move forward in the evolution of consciousness. So the key is so important. Why? Because it's care. Care is it can be lost very, very easily. That's why it's on a thread. So we have to be very careful. Now, the third initiate that we see sitting at the top of the ladder, we see this female being, and she's sitting with a few naked children. And my take on this is that once the student masters the self, there is an obligation to preserve this knowledge for progeny and posterity, right? It's about charity, giving back. And the being is not only caring for the future young, but is also kind of, shielding them from the harsh sun rays of truth as the children are, naked as a symbol of innocence while young, especially from birth to age 6. That's why we preserve this knowledge for when they're ready to receive it, right? And this is about the master mason or master builder, which I'll be getting more into as we move through these shows. So to build a strong temple in the name of truth is to automatically build a strong future for our young, for progeny, for posterity, right? These 3 initiates can also be summed up as thought, emotion, and action. This is part of understanding consciousness. So entered apprentice being thought, the middle fellow craft initiate being emotion, and the master mason, the master builder initiate being action, right? Now, we're coming up on the hour mark, so I think I'm just going to cover just a little bit more and with the pillars, and then I will put a finer point on them and add more information when we get to the next show. But I just want to do maybe like a little brief overview of the 2 pillars especially. So looking at the 3 columns, this is about understanding or being able to see dualistically in order to understand unity or the one. So in other words, we can't understand the one without understanding the 2. We can't understand the middle pillar without understanding the left and the right pillar, okay? And when we imagine the yin yang symbol, this symbol is equivalent to one or the whole, right? And we can't understand dark without light and light without dark, right? So we can't understand the one or the whole yin yang symbol without understanding light and dark, or yin and yang, right? So we must learn each pillar in degrees to begin to erect the middle pillar, the one. These 2 pillars are opposing forces that we find in nature, right? So let's begin with the 2 pillars, the left and the right pillar. So starting on the left archetypal pillar with the sun above, we see what's called the pillar of Jachin, spelled Jachin. And it's also pronounced Yakayin, so you can say Yakayin or Jachin. And this column represents strength, serenity, stableness, firmness, and action. So the letter S representing strength and serenity and also stableness. This is the sacred masculine pillar. This pillar is the white or light pillar. It is the polar opposite of the pillar that we see on the right. And this pillar holds the keys to understanding our left-brained aspects of consciousness. And a few of these aspects that are very important to note is intellect, logic, science, and analytical thought. And this pillar can also be related to the yang half of the yin-yang symbol, okay? The white part of the yin-yang symbol. So it's the positive pillar, right? And another related ancient symbol to keep in mind is the upward pointing blade, which is an equilateral triangle, which also holds the fire element symbol, okay? Now, it's important that we recognize that the left and right pillar represent the equilibrium of two opposing forces. So what would be the opposing of masculine or the left brain or positive or light? What's the opposite of that? Well, if you look on the right, the pillar on the right is referred to as the pillar of Boaz. B-O-A-Z, also pronounced Boaz. And the B at the bottom of the pillar also represents beauty. This pillar corresponds to the sacred feminine energy of the universe. It is the dark pillar. It is the negative aspect of the universe. And as Brandon and I have said many times, it's not negative in a bad way. It's about negative in the way that, a car battery needs a negative and positive charge in order to work or start. Negative as in receptive to light. And this pillar corresponds to right-brained aspects of consciousness, which are intuition, creativeness, compassion, and, big picture thinking. This would be the yin, feminine energy of the yin-yang symbol, right? This is the black part of the yin-yang symbol. And this sacred energy is symbolic of the chalice, which is the inverted triangle, okay? And this is the elemental water symbol as well. Very, very important. So there's so much more that I'm going to go further and explain on the next show. And it is vital that if anyone is studying this information for the first time here, to make sure to follow up on the next show where I'll be explaining the middle pillar, aka Jacob's ladder, and the sun, the eye, and the moon symbols, as well as the carpet and the tassels and the directions. Very, very important symbols. And of course, there's so much more to this that it's just not going to be covered here because, you can pull out so much information from these symbols. But I'm going to cover as much as I can. And we have to see how this all ties together symbolically in order to experience how it reflects ourselves, to understand how truly important this sacred science is to our sovereignty, to our freedom. If we really take this serious, we'll be able to see for ourselves the power of our imagination and this symbolism. We'll be able to see the power of morality and, logic, natural law. And, it just goes on and on and on. There's so much importance to this. And I feel like a lot of people just overlook it. But it really takes overcoming our ego and really paying attention to the patterns and seeing how everything relates. And as with most occult symbols, the twin pillars conceal multiple layers of meaning. They stand for the greatest spiritual principles that are the basis of all life, really. So Okay, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and end it there. We've got a lot more to cover in the next shows. So I know this can be a lot to take in at first, but it really only gets more interesting from here on out. And I hope it resonates well with all of you. And, I'm doing my best to present it in a way that's easy for people to, take in. I'm really trying to be as thorough and simple as I can without overdoing it. But this type of knowledge is so crucial for understanding ourselves and understanding purpose. It's a discovery that helps us understand what being human really is all about. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. And it blows my mind that this kind of information really exists. I never thought that I would ever encounter such beautiful knowledge that, because I've always been in search for myself. I've always asked who I am and why am I here and what this is all about. And I really am stoked that I came across this knowledge because it really has put everything in perspective in ways that I never thought could ever be. So if anyone is interested, more shows, presentations, and news can be found at CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. Also, please definitely make sure to not miss the next shows where I'll be going further into esoteric Freemasonry. It's definitely not a good idea to get this far and not go any further, because a little bit of knowledge can be very, very dangerous. And if you have any questions regarding the topics for these shows, please email me at cubbyhole@mail.com. Also, any donations are always appreciated here at the CubbyWhole, as anything that's given goes directly to this website. And, all you got to do is just hit the donation button on the top of the website. And it's set up pretty easy to navigate from there. And thanks so much to those who have donated so far. I'm very, very thankful for that. Okay, I'm your host, Nate Cap. Thank you for listening, and keep in mind to do no harm, defend truth, and keep transcending dogma.
Another epic episode. That was definitely one I'm gonna have to go back and listen to again. Like I said on the last episode, congratulations to Boston Celtics again for winning the championship this year. There was some great games. Man, those are some great ball they played. I thought I had more to say. I can't think. Brain fart. Anyways, thanks again if you made it this far. We're gonna keep grinding. Stay tuned and stay golden.